I told you that Donald Trump is intent on hurting all of us, I wasn't kidding. I think the millionaires and the billionaires finally got the message.
As a Hispanic, I voted for Donald J. Trump. Dude, I regret it so much, man.
I am regretting my vote for Donald Trump.
I voted for Donald Trump, and now
here in Missouri, we were proud to vote for President Trump, but now we're definitely regretting it. Last year under Biden, we got approved for a $250,000 cost-sharing contract with the Department of Agriculture to improve our water systems on our 300-acre cattle farm. It's beneficial to both parties because we get a break on the cost of labor and construction putting these new pipes in, and the general population gets healthier cattle, healthier beef, etc. So basically we front all the costs for the labor and construction, and then they reimburse us. But in January and now in this month, Trump's put all these executive orders to freeze all these contracts. So we've already fronted over $100,000 getting these new pipes in, and now we're not going to get reimbursed. If we call and ask, they say they don't know when the funds are going to be there or if they're going to be there at all. I couldn't believe that Trump would do this to us. We've always supported him. But then my friend sent me an article on what he used to do as a real estate mogul in New York, and apparently he didn't pay companies all the time that he did business with. So I don't know if this is ever going to get solved. We can't afford it. I don't know what we're going to do.
We have some big news right now. Donald Trump's tariffs on China are impacting farmers the most, and many of them have buyer's remorse for even voting for Donald Trump in the first place. One of the top products that is tariffed is the U.S. soybean, and U.S. soybean exports, according to CNN, are now subject to a total tariff of 135% because of the 10% tariff imposed in March, along with the 125% tariff announced last week. If you recall, back in 2018, the winner of the first U.S.-China trade war wasn't U.S. farmers, but rather Brazil, because Brazil became the world's leading soybean exporter. And since then, exports to China have grown 280%, while U.S. exports have remained flat. Many soybean farmers in the Midwest actually voted for Donald Trump. They come from states that are red states that voted for Donald Trump consistently, both in 2016 and in 2024. And Trump had long promised exemptions or support for farmers, but they haven't received any bailouts just yet. And some are now even having buyer's remorse because their businesses are going to suffer because they can't export the number of soybeans that they were before. As always, I'll do a full breakdown on my Substack, link to my bio, so subscribe for free and follow along for all the news you need to know about.
Trump is doing everything in his power to bait black people, and it's only getting worse because black people aren't falling for anything at all right now. To the point where now you're just about to deploy the National Guard in Washington, D.C., where there's a high black population, especially a high black homeless population, because you want black people in the streets protesting so you can enact martial law. We all know it. We all know it. Because the thing is, when white people have been protesting, and all of these protests have been so civil, none of them have even been streamed on TV because they're not violent. They don't get violent with white people. But they have no problem getting violent with black people. And they know if they can get black people out to protest and to fight for our rights yet again, they can enact martial law and they can throw us all in jail if we ever think of rebelling. And I'm not living in a military city. No offense, but I don't respect any authority at all whatsoever. That's my issue. I'm also not afraid of cops. I'm not afraid of the military. I've had cops with guns in my faces. I've had cops with giant horses and guns in my faces while I protested before. I will have a traffic stop and there will be multiple cops that get out for me at a traffic stop. And I've never been scared of y'all, because the thing is, y'all get off on people being scared. That's the only way y'all can't get me. Like, none of you bitches scare me. Y'all are like my little brother with his toy gun. Like, oh my god, you're gonna get me. Like, quit playing with your food and just do what you want to do. But everybody else is just a chess piece. Everybody else is. The only group that he's actually after is black people. That's why he's deporting Latinos, because who's gonna work in the fields now? With black female unemployment rate reaching an all-time high. That's why he's cutting Medicaid. That's why you're trying to regulate food stamps. That's why you cut the weather service. That's why you cut the only accessible piece of media to every single child in the country, poor and rich. He literally said, he was like, they were on a farm and he was talking about farmer responsibility as in people could live on these farms.
Mr. Donald Trump sold lies to all these constructors, all these farmers, all these people that voted for him, and all the confusion and the frustration that we are seeing today is as a result of the lies that they were lied to. And it is also a broader part to reveal how racism is so expensive, because when you vote on the basis of this is a white person and this is going to protect us, it's going to protect our businesses, it's going to protect our work, but it didn't turn how they wanted, and you know how really this affected majority of these people. And so everyone is kind of confused, everyone is frustrated at the same time, but people are going and looking back to the lives of black people. And I'm not saying that black people are not also having it hard. Of course they are, but at least they can put a smile on their face, because this is something that they have grappled with for the longest time. Mr. Donald Trump allegedly lied to all these people, and he told them and he promised them the utopian. He promised them that America will be great once he is chosen. He promised them that he's going to be fixing the economy. People, especially constructors, farmers, all these people in the economic market are crying, and they're saying that it was better than even when Mr. Donald Trump was in there before. And on the sideline, we are having black people. These are a group of people that warned you about every mistake that you are yet to make. But you didn't listen to him. You didn't listen to them, because they were black people. And so today, people are looking people to work on their construction. People are looking for people that can work on their farms, because the immigration crisis that was being created by Mr. Donald Trump is effing everyone, and is effing white people, even those people who are promised the utopian. And so the frustration and confusion among many white Americans today can be in part be traced as the structural decisions and political choices that they supported over decades. Choices that black Americans often warned against but were dismissed. White farmers, contractors, and tradesmen such as plumbers are facing economic decline because they put their faith in political narratives that prioritized short-term cultural dominance and privilege over long-term collective security and prosperity. This situation reveals how racism blinds people to rational economic and social planning. By ignoring the voices of black communities who have historically seen the pitfalls of these policies, white workers now find themselves in this crisis. And that's why this video. I'll be back, and then I'll be sharing my thoughts at the end of it all. Stay tuned. Let me know what you feel about this. Let me know what you think about this. But until then, let's watch the video. I'll be back.
With these farmers, and they could just build property on the land, and people could live here and work on the fields. Does that not sound familiar? Make America great again is bringing back slavery, bringing back black people in shackles. That's all it is. That's literally everything. And I think he knows that black people aren't falling for it, which is why he's getting more intense and more aggressive with his tactics. Because black people aren't falling for anything right now. We're not protesting. We're not fighting. We're just minding our business. So, good luck.
Kansas farmers are publicly regretting voting for Donald Trump and wish they would have read Project 2025 now that Donald Trump's policies are directly affecting them, specifically the cuts to USAID funding, which would have been used to purchase farmers' goods. Listen to what the executive director of the Kansas Farmers Union had to say about it.
There are a lot of people who are very concerned out there who voted for this administration, but you know, they wrote it all down in Project 2025. I guess we should have paid a little closer attention to what was in that.
Yeah, you probably should have. It's not as if people weren't warning you. It's not as if Kamala Harris went out every single day and warned Americans about Project 2025. But you believe the guy that can never tell the truth when he said, I know nothing about it. And now you're suffering. But the worst part is we're all suffering. There's hungry people around the world that are being affected by that funding cut. So yes, welcome to the find out phase. We're all here. Have a seat. Grab yourself some ramen. It's the only thing that's cheap anymore. And enjoy.
I was a Trump supporter. I don't know how long I can keep doing this.
You should have stopped years ago, but continue.
I have a construction company, and not a fucking thing is getting done.
So here we are, in the midst of the consequences of our own actions. Got it. Continue.
This is what I get.
Yes.
This is what I fucking get. Nothing but white boys. Takes 4 days to do a one-day job. I might have fucked up.
You might have fucked up? No, you 100% fucked up. But the sad thing is, the sad and horrible thing is that you only think you fucked up because it's directly affecting you. You don't care about the millions of other people that it's affecting in the United States. This is 100% what you get when you ignore that he's a felon. When you ignore when he said, grab her by the you know what. When you ignore that he is liable for sexual assault. When you ignore that he has done scams and he says racist, horrible, homophobic things. This is what you get. Because the racism was there in his language all the time. You could hear him speak his racism every single day, and you chose to ignore it. So yeah, this is what you have to deal with. And it doesn't matter which race we're talking about. Donald Trump only wants white people in this country, and you ignored that. So yeah, you're dealing with it. All my love.
Oh, but sit down, there's more. I'm on a roll tonight. Let's talk about the Trump administration placing the images of black men on the White House social media pages. So the Trump administration has just crossed another line, posting the mugshots of arrested black men on the official White House social media pages. Not one white man, not one non-black face. Did you know about that? Let's be clear. This isn't about transparency or public safety. This is about controlling the narrative. And I've been talking about that this week on social media, how they are allowing the media to be controlled about what you see, controlled about what you hear about, controlled about what you learn. We're literally having to say things like, what was that word that I've been hearing, or that phrase? Music festival? What about that one? Or what about the purses? You couldn't even say the other word again because you just may get suppressed. So let's be clear. It's about stoking fear and feeding into the age-old racist stereotype that black people are inherently criminal or dangerous. Because remember, this is the same guy that took out a 4-page ad on 4 innocent young black men. Yeah, that same guy. So this isn't a new tactic, folks. We already know that. This is not new. We're used to this. We already know how this is going to go. And here's the thing. We're going to have to watch very carefully how the media plays this out, because guess what? If you think he's not controlling the media, think again. I guarantee you this entire conversation that we're having right now won't even get 3,000 views. It won't even get 300. Because my information and other people who provide news and journalistic commentary and content is being suppressed. All right. Let's get back into it, shall we? Hang on just a second. So here's what they're doing. This is not about the concept that this is new, because we all know that it is not. This is about continuing to work on the continuous stereotype of the black male in this country, right? It's used to justify over-policing. It's also used to talk about mass incarceration, because we already know what that's all about, right? You remember the 13th Amendment, and you do know what that's about. Right? Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure. And that violent targeting of our communities for decades, that ain't new either. There's more. So by pushing these images out to the public on the White House page, that must make it real, right? That's got to make it real. Here's what's happening. They're shaping the perception and telling the nation who to fear. They want old white ladies to continue to clutch their purses in public and lock their doors, justifying future crackdowns. That's what they're doing too. I want you to understand that this is actually planting the seed that an increase in police and military presence in black neighborhoods is necessary. And they're distracting you guys from the systemic failure that we're all witnessing right now. You ever thought about that? You ever thought about what that means? So they're masking policy failures with the mess that we are seeing right now. Washington, D.C.'s crime rate is the lowest it's been in almost 30 years. It's down another 26%. The data and the numbers don't lie. But here's the issue. History is absolutely repeating itself. So this mirrors the exact same propaganda campaigns used to target Latinx and immigrant communities. And we're seeing that in real time, where they're just going around and they're just picking up folks. Doesn't matter who it is. We just go pick them up. That's what we're going to do. Yeah. Yeah. Now the focus is on Black communities. And y'all, we have said that on social media. We have continued to say that on social media. From the beginning, we knew that our communities were next. Now, here's the end game. It's going to be expanded.
Oh, yeah. Here in North Dakota, we definitely are regretting our votes for Grandpa Tariff. Oh, yeah. Me and my husband run a seed farm up here, and Daddy runs a soybean farm. And the tariffs are hitting North Dakota harder than almost any other state. Yeah, we're really concerned about it. Last time Trump was president, we had to get a bailout, and we were hoping that this time it would be better, but I'm not seeing any signs that we're gonna get spared this time around either. We had to pick up a couple pieces of steel in West Fargo yesterday, and we asked them if the tariffs had been affecting the prices yet, and they said just talking about the tariffs affects the price. You know, China will start going to Brazil and Africa for their soybeans, and then they'll establish relationships and we'll get completely cut out of the loop. Trump says it's short-term pain for long-term gain. So far in my life, I've never seen the tariffs do any gain for any of us farmers here in North Dakota. I'm not really even sure why we voted for him.
So my good sis J-Doll says she wants to see the clip. She said, let me see the clip. Ask and you shall receive.
Back to their country with a pass back in legally, and we're doing things that are very difficult to do and very complex, but it works really well. We're sending them back, and then they're schooling, they're learning, they're coming in legally. We have a lot of that going on, but we're taking care of our farmers. We can't let our farmers not have anybody, these are these people, you can't replace them very easily. You know, people that live in the inner city are not doing that work. They're just not doing that work. And they've tried, we've tried, everybody tried. They don't do it. These people do it naturally. I said, what happens if they get it to a farmer the other day? What happens if they get a bad back? He said, they don't get a bad back, sir, because if they get a bad back, they die. I said, that's interesting, isn't it? You know, these are very, in many ways, they're very, very special people. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so now that you have actually heard the clip, that you've heard the recording for yourself, let's actually break down exactly what Donald Trump has said so far. He started off that clip or that recording stating, oh, how, you know, they have policies in plan of trying to help the farmers, right? Because they desperately need these migrant workers. They need these undocumented migrant workers. They can't leave them without anybody. That right there is admission that the United States agriculture economy is taking a hit behind his policies and his mass deportations. That's the first thing. Donald Trump stresses the fact that the American farmers cannot be left without anybody. They cannot be left without anybody. And then he further goes on by saying that the undocumented migrant workers that he once was calling illegal criminals are very, very special people. They're very, very special people that cannot be easily replaced. Right after Donald Trump makes that statement and say that they cannot be replaced easily, he goes right into stating that people, inner city people, are not doing that work. Words have meanings, okay? When it comes to this government and this American society, when they say inner people, they're referring to Black people. And when he said that kind of work, he's talking about field work. In addition to him stating that inner city people will not be doing that kind of work, he goes on by saying that I've tried. We've tried. Everybody's tried. Do you know who everybody is? The American government, white supremacy. And do you want to know what their version of trying was? DEI eliminations. DEI eliminations. And not just that, but the undoing of so many policies and acts that actually allowed for black people to have equal footing amongst white people in certain areas, in certain spaces. The elimination of DEI programs and incentives were intended to push black people out of the spaces that white people deemed should only be for them. And I'm talking about admin jobs. I'm talking about jobs in medicine, in accounting. They wanted black people to go back to back-breaking work, okay? Being in the fields, hospitality work. That's what they wanted. As of right now, 300,000 women have been displaced from employment, okay? They have lost their jobs. And they thought, and when I say they, this white supremacy American government thought that those 300,000 black women were going to go back into the field. Instead, they got creative. They got creative. And so with all of these mass deportations, they thought that they were going to be able to fill the roles with their original laborers, okay? Their labor workers, black people. Now, see, if there's only two things that you take from this video, the first thing that I want you to take away is the fact that America's success is directly dependent on its labor, free labor, an amount of free labor that they're able to exploit from the citizens, okay? And the second thing is that black Americans will always be their first target. That will always be their first target. When they think about getting free labor, exploited free labor, they will always think of black Americans. Do you understand the level of hatred, jealousy, animosity that you have to have, that this American Constitution has to have to literally pick at one group of people forever, to the point where they are willing to wipe out all other races to try to get this one race of people to bow down, and they refuse. They refuse. You guys, America, had labor that you were already exploiting, but you were willing to get rid of them in mass.
America has never lacked labor. It just always had a very clear idea of who should be doing it. The fields, the factories, the kitchens, the care work, always someone else's job. And now, according to our Secretary of Agriculture, that job should go to Medicaid recipients. Not because they volunteered, not because it pays well, but because in the eyes of power, the poor are disposable, and poverty is now a work assignment. Recently, the Secretary of Agriculture suggested that immigrants being deported from this country will be replaced on farms by Medicaid recipients. Let that sink in. We're now saying if you are poor, you work. If you are sick, you work. If you are disabled, an elderly, or a veteran who served this country and now relies on public health care, you work. Not because it's a calling, but because your life, your value, is reduced to whether you can produce cheap labor. For food you may not even be able to afford yourself. This isn't policy, it's punishment. It's the reincarnation of an old American idea that certain people were born to serve, and if they can't serve willingly, then the government will assign them value. Let's be real here. We know who she's not imagining out there in the fields. She's not thinking of white mothers in rural Ohio. She's not thinking of Vietnam vets who've spent decades battling PTSD. She's not thinking of your grandfather on oxygen or your neighbor recovering from surgery. But when she says Medicaid recipients, she wants you to picture a black or brown face, a poor person, someone else. This is not about labor. This is about lineage. This is about who America has always considered the help. And now that immigration is being restricted and borders are tightening, they're looking inward and they're asking, who's left to exploit? But here's the irony. The people they want to push into those fields are the same people who built the country in the first place, who fed America, who picked, planted, and processed without dignity, wages, or thanks. And we are not going back. This isn't just a cruel policy suggestion. It's a reflection of how far the political mind has strayed from compassion and logic. Because if they truly cared about labor shortages, they'd reform immigration, they'd raise wages, they'd offer healthcare, housing, and safety. But instead, they punish the poor for being poor, and they punish the sick for being sick. So the next time someone in power suggests that Medicaid recipients should work the farms, ask them, which ones? The single mothers in trailer parks? The white veterans on disability? The 74-year-old widower in Alabama? Because if you're going to assign people to the fields, don't pretend it's about fairness. Call it what it is. Modern day indentured labor.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you're doing great from wherever you're watching me from. I'm not laughing at anybody, neither am I happy that anything is happening to anybody. But all these things that happened, it was a wake-up call to the white community. It was a wake-up call to show you that racism was expensive, and it's still expensive because it is causing you to lose a lot. Like, people are losing their minds, people are losing their resources, and you know, it's happening. And so these categories of white farmers, constructors, plumbers, and all these people that are being affected, we need to talk about this. America needs a revolution. Until then, you get to realize that racism is so expensive and this is affecting you, and you need to take, first of all, you need to take your time and understand how played we were all played, and especially you white people, because of the short-term conservative ideologies that you are being given, and you're thinking that that's gonna help you economically. No, it didn't. It just made things worse for you, and so as a result, this is what is happening to you. And the economic situation that is happening in the United States today, majority of the biggest problem is poor decision making that Mr. Donald Trump tried to make. Now, for farmers, many white agricultural communities supported leaders who pushed for restrictive immigration laws and deportations. Yet, these same communities relied heavily on immigrant labor to keep their farms running. And in so, Black Americans, particularly Black activists, have always educated these white folks that scapegoating immigrants will lead to labor shortage and collapsing industries. We can see that's happening today because many farmers are indeed struggling because there are not enough workers willing to do the grueling farm labor. The very policies rooted in xenophobia and racial hierarchies are now undermining the livelihoods of very people who supported them. And this is something that happened, and you need to keep track of this. Also, white contractors and construction workers face similar contradictions. For decades, they aligned themselves politically with elites who promised deregulation, tax breaks, and union suppression. These policies weakened labor protections, reduced wages, and hollowed out worker bargaining power. Black labor leaders and civil rights advocates consistently warned that the dismantling of unions and the weakening of collective action would harm all workers, will harm all working class people, not just minorities. Yet, many white workers choose racial identity over class solidarity, and now they're struggling to find stable contracts in an industry dominated by outsourcing and cost cutting. Also, for plumbers and other tradesmen face other dimension of this problem. While their professionals used to be protected by unions and apprenticeship pipelines, globalization and deregulation have made the jobs less secure. Furthermore, many of them bought into political promises of economic revival that never materialized. Black activists frequently pointed out that the elites are making promises that were enriching themselves while ignoring the struggle of the working class Americans. The result is widespread disillusionment among white tradesmen who feel betrayed. yet remain reluctant to acknowledge that systemic racism and capitalist exploitations are linked forces. Another important aspect is how consumer debt and financial systems are entangling both white and black workers. Many white families, supported by the deregulation of banks and financial institutions because it was framed as promoting freedom and growth. Yet, as the black communities had already experienced with predatory lending and redlining, these policies created cycles of crashing debt and foreclosure. Now, white workers are facing the same traps: student loan burdens, medical debt, and mortgages they cannot afford, realizing too late that the system they defended is designed to exploit them. Healthcare is another domain where black warnings went unheard. For decades, black leaders fought for equitable access to healthcare and pointed out the dangers of privatized systems that prioritize profit over human needs. Many white communities resisted universal healthcare proposals, believing they would lose out to minorities. However, today, many of those same communities face medical bankruptcies, rural hospital closures, and opioid addiction crisis. Their opposition to equitable system has come back to haunt them into the form of mass suffering. The cultural dissonance comes from the fact that black Americans often foresaw this crisis because they lived under the sharp edge of systemic neglect for generations. They recognized that policies favoring elites would harm the masses, but racism ensured that their warnings were ignored. Now, as white farmers, contractors, and plumbers face financial ruin and declining opportunities, they realize that they aligned themselves with policies that prioritized maintaining racial hierarchies instead of building sustainable livelihoods. Right? And this also demonstrates the danger of what some scholars called false consciousness. When people vote or act against their own interests because they identify with a system that actually exploits them. For many white workers, racial identity offered them a sense of superiority, even as the same economic policies stripped them of their jobs, pensions, and futures. Black Americans have always been denied such illusions, were able to see more clearly where the system was headed. And at a psychological level, the crisis is magnified because many white workers now feel betrayed but cannot admit that people were right. This cognitive dissonance fuels anger, confusion, and resentment as they seek scapegoats rather than acknowledging their complicity in creating the condition for their own downfall. Instead of building coalitions across racial lines for justice, they are trapped in cycles of blame and denial. And in the end of the plight of white farmers, contractors, and plumbers underscores a tragic irony. By ignoring the lived wisdom of black Americans and dismissing their calls for justice, they undermine their own survival. The systems they supported, rooted in racial supremacy and capitalist exploitation, have turned against them. And while black Americans cannot save them from the consequences of their choices, their experiences still holds valuable lessons. That solidarity, justice, and equity are the only real foundation for lasting prosperity. Please let me know what you think about this video. I'm your host and presenter, Jidok Stories. But until then, let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.